Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we are watching something week to week, television show usually, with some camaraderie, some insight, and some recommendations along the way as well. In today's episode, we'll be discussing the sixth episode of Alien Earth, an episode called The Fly. As usual with these Alien recap episodes, I'm joined by Darren.
G'day there, Victor. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. We had some bad news here today. I don't like this political violence. A little bit ugly to see these things happening, unfortunately, in this, and we're just a day before the 9/11 anniversary. Mm-hmm. I'll digress slightly here, Darren, by the way, since I brought up 9/11, not to talk about 9/11, but just to talk about something that maybe I've mentioned to you before, but I think about it all the time. It's so easy. Like my parents, for example, say like, man, things are changing so quick. And usually it's because like, oh, I have to do online banking now or something that they don't like to do. But they think everything's changing so fast, they can't keep up. And I got to tell you, Darren, just thinking about 9/11 tomorrow and, obviously how traumatic that was. I remember that day so vividly here, living so close to New York City and having friends of mine that were in there and not being able to call, obviously crazy time, just that whole period of time. But I think about how things have changed so much. And I'm like, 2001, the BlackBerry comes around in 2002. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, our smartphones are a little bit better, a little more sleek. But I mean, what else has changed? And people listen to the same music. And then I think to myself, let's subtract 24 years from 2001. And we go back to 1977. I mean, I was alive for that period of time. I think you were alive as well, Darren, right? But I think to myself, like, we got the internet, punk rock, alternative music, electronic music, just in music. It's just like everything is completely broken, different, right? All technology goes from being analog to digital. Like everything changed in that period of time. And everybody's talking about how things change now. I'm like, what? Our phones are a little bit lighter. Our batteries last a little longer. Like, I don't see all this. I mean, AI may break all that, but but other than that, I don't really see all this change that everybody claims to see around them.
Yeah, look, I wasn't alive in 77, but I get your point. I didn't realize we were going to do a discussion on this type of thing. But yeah,
it in there.
Thinking back, I mean, I was, 24 years younger at 9/11, and I do remember it quite vividly. Obviously, I wasn't as close to it as you were, but I do remember watching it on television through the night. I was just captivated, and it was just such a shocking thing to see televised. And but yeah, I mean, I reckon I'm fitter now. I'm healthier now. Mm-hmm. I'm probably a lot smarter now, and I'm probably a more well-rounded person now. So it's all positive, mate. Yeah, and but possibly still listening to the same music.
I think we all do that. As a matter of fact, that to that point, I just am always curious about how, because of TikTok and other trends and just Spotify being so readily available, think about like what happened to guitar rock. It's made a little bit of a comeback. A lot of these emo rappers have all these like live instruments on their rap songs now. But in general, like rock has disappeared. And I do wonder if just like the easy availability of the entire history of rock and roll is just too much competition for like a new rock star to emerge.
Yeah, that's interesting. When they had that whole kind of indie rock thing over the last 20 years, I think that's still kind of going around.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, I mean, electronic music's almost taken over. I mean, even the rock bands now still have a click track that plays electronic drums or something that, synth, something that's going on in the background. So, yeah, there's not a lot of that kind of pure rock and roll anymore, but happy to be wrong about that if anyone's got recommendations.
Yeah, please do recommend stuff to us. If I've been really interested in the fact that, for example, shoegaze is making a big comeback now, and that's very curious to me. Obviously, the original artists, but now there are new artists that sound like shoegaze, which is kind of an interesting genre to have emerged in the recent period of time. But anyway, if you have good music out there that is not in the mainstream, obviously, there are mainstream artists that I enjoy. By the way, my daughter listens to some stuff that I like. A lot of stuff I don't like, but some of the stuff I do like. But if it's not in the mainstream and you want to shout something out, please send it our way, especially if it's a rock band that you think is really emerging. Of course, we loved, by the way, here on the podcast, we loved, now I can't remember the name of the band, the song from
Oh,
Mobland.
the Mobland title song. Yeah, yeah.
Now I can't remember the name of the artist, but whoever that artist was that does that song, they had an album just last year, and I love that. I crushed that album all the time because, in no small part because we were covering that show. That's the power of suggestion too, by the way. I had that album on, repeat in my car, and when Mobland ended, I haven't listened to it recently. So there you go.
Funny. That's going to annoy me that we can't find the artist from the Irish artist. What is it?
I have to look it up now. The album's called Romance. I remember. Starburster is the song. Fontaines DC is the band.
Fontaines DC. There you go.
And the album's called Romance. I remember the album name, and I couldn't remember the name of the artist.
Oh my God. I just had to keep listening to that title sequence. Every time this show came on, I had to watch it, had to listen to that track. It was so good.
Okay, a couple of bits of news here on the podcast. We just had the Dexter finale. Very briefly, Darren, you watched the finale. What'd you think? And what do you think about the prospects for season 2?
Yeah, I was a bit mixed on the finale, to be honest. I thought it was pretty by the numbers, didn't really surprise me that much, and then just led into a second season quite casually. But as a whole, I thought that series was really fun, and it got me back into Dexter, which I hadn't been into for the last few seasons. So yeah, positive about that, I guess.
Yeah, in general, I thought the season was a lot of fun, as anybody who listened to us here doing the coverage here on the podcast. But same, I thought that there was absolutely no surprises at all in the finale, which is fine. I mean, Dexter, to be honest, even the OG series, not full of surprises in the finales. Sometimes the series would be very intriguing leading up to the finale, and then they just kind of button things up at the end, which is maybe par for the course here for that series, I should say. But yeah, definitely intrigued to see another season of that. Oh, and of course, we just kicked off Task here as well. I think you did watch this as well, Darren. It seems to be maybe we just should cover HBO shows because this has gotten, we had a pretty slow summer covering Smoke, for example, but Task is off to a very hot start, one of the hottest starts we've had for a series. So very interested in seeing how this is. And apparently our audience, at least, I don't know how popular it is in the mainstream, but our particular audience on this podcast seems to like Task or be curious about it.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's just the Brad Inglesby connection.
It could be.
It seems to attract
it's our original DNA.
To listen to it. Yeah, yeah, I enjoyed it. A bit of a slow burn of a series, but yeah, I quite enjoyed it. It reminded me of the movie The Order.
Yes,
from last year, a couple of years ago. Yeah, so kind of just the good versus evil, but then the evil guy is got a lot of good in him, and yeah, that kind of dichotomy there. And then the good guy is a bit of a drunk, so he's got a lot of demons that he's facing. But really interested in it, and yeah, I like the slow burn, and hopefully that keeps going strong.
Until those final moments, that was not that kind of lit a fuse on the show there at the end of that, which we won't spoil here, but I think that's picked up the pace after that slow start.
I couldn't believe the ending, I must say. Shocking.
Yeah, truly shocking. Agreed. So do catch up on that if anybody out there who hasn't, and it's on HBO Max. So a bunch of news I want to talk about HBO Max. Now that I brought that up, I kind of had it here anyway. Just in the box office recap episode last week, I had this whole conversation about one of the big winners was Warner Brothers, of course, who had all these hits last summer, and everybody was making fun of them. They were going to have a terrible year based on their slate, and they just had hit after hit after hit. Most prominently over the course of the year was these horror films that weren't these cheap, low-budget horror films, which of course are always good to make some profit, but these risks on more expensive horror films, not super low budget, but medium budget, even higher budget, like Sinners cost $90 million. And just hit after hit after hit. That Sinners was a huge hit. Final Destination, a huge hit. Weapons is a huge hit. And Darren, the Conjuring movie that came out this weekend was tracking to open with $80 million worldwide. And it made $200 million over the weekend.
That's Marvel money.
Exactly. I don't think Marvel movies are opening that big anymore. So a crazy success there for them again. I don't know if I am kind of like not really into the Conjuring films in general, but just speaks to, I like this as an indicator that, whether it's original like Sinners or Weapons, or whether it's extending these franchises, that people are spending a little bit more money without being like, we need to make a $350 million blockbuster. It's like there is a middle ground where you can make a lot of money if you make quality films. I don't know if this is a quality film, by the way, but I'm just saying that, there is a middle ground where people will turn up for the right type of product. Yeah, and that kind of segues into another thing I want to mention is that Warner Brothers HBO just announced that they're going to break the HBO Max / Warner Brother brand off of the larger corporation, which is how it was originally before it was kind of consumed. And they've rolled out HBO around the world. They've had a string of hit movies. HBO Max is growing like crazy overseas. They've had a bunch of hit shows as well. So you just were asking me last week, do you think there's going to be some kind of consolidation? I think that this is positioning HBO to be acquired by somebody. My guess is that Apple TV, they just distributed F1, which was a huge hit for Apple and for Warner Brothers. Apple kind of is playing like Prestige, but imagine, I mean, this is exciting for me. Imagine HBO with its kind of curated, really good shows and spending a lot of time developing these projects, but with Apple money, I think that's going to be a good combination if that's the direction they go in.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, Apple just have an open checkbook when they make a movie, don't they? I mean,
they're a $4 trillion company. They could spend as much as they want.
Yeah, insane. I watched F1 again on the weekend. It was Father's Day here, so I made everybody sit down and
Happy
watch
Father's
F1.
Day.
Thank you.
I watched it again too, and I loved it. I watched it at home. I'm like, is this going to hold up? My family was away for a couple of weekends ago, and I watched a bunch of movies, and one of them was F1 because it was available at home now through the Apple app to rent. Not, I'm sure it'll be available to stream very shortly, and everybody else can watch it. But I did rent it, and I'm like, is this going to work at home? And man, it worked. I loved it.
It really does, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, and one last thing to mention about HBO. Real quick question again. We could probably delve into this in future episodes, but Peacemaker, are you up to date on Peacemaker?
Yep, caught up. Yeah, I think there's 3 episodes in. Yeah, hilarious show. I think it's so funny that James Gunn does the family-friendly Superman in the theaters, and this extremely offensive TV show at home, and it's so entertaining.
Have you heard the new Superman news that there is Superman, it's just called the Man of the Future?
So this is going to be the sequel, right? And then Lex gets a suit. Is that correct?
Oh, he's saying it is not a sequel. James Gunn is very aggressively saying this is not a sequel, and it has leaked out that apparently there is some kind of world-threatening event that's occurring. So Lex Luthor and Superman have to team up together to defeat this thing. So but this is not a sequel to this movie. I don't know why. There's a differentiator in some way, but it's a standalone story, I guess is what he's trying to say.
Okay, yeah, bring it on. Yeah, Nicholas Hoult, great Lex.
Exactly, and, I love him.
Yeah, so bring it on.
Yeah, didn't love that movie, but I did love the characters for sure. All the characters, all the actors, I should say, and all their performances. So more of that for sure. Oh, and one last thing, of course, without spoiling anything now, how long do you think it's going to be on Peacemaker before the other shoe drops and we realize that quote unquote perfect universe, not so perfect?
I don't think it's going to be long at all, is it? Best dimension ever.
Best dimension ever. Maybe not. We'll have to see how that all plays out. I've seen some clues there that maybe we'll talk about offline because I don't want to spoil anything here. But if the other shoe does drop, maybe we'll have a separate conversation about it at some point. Okay, this weekend, of course, The Long Walk is coming out. This isn't even the biggest films that are coming out this weekend. The giant movie coming out now is that anime film that's coming out. Yeah, again, foreign animation, just huge. And there's the new Downton Abbey movie coming out as well. But the movies I'm paying attention to are, first of all, The Long Walk, which is getting great reviews. Has a 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. And this is from all the mainstream critics, not the niche critics. So it looks like it's potentially a good film, and very much looking forward to that. This is interestingly written by Stephen King when he was writing as Richard Bachman. He wrote under an alias, just out of curiosity to see if he could publish things without putting his name on it and see how they would sell. Also wrote The Running Man with that other moniker, which is interesting because these are two basically dystopian game shows, two different, very different ones. But we're also getting a Running Man movie later this year, of course. My first question to you, Darren, is are you going to watch The Long Walk? But more importantly, how long is it before we have a Mr. Beast video that has this exact same premise?
Yeah, I did watch a bit of that Mr. Beast TV show, which I wasn't a massive
Yeah,
fan
we
of.
watched it because
Um,
my daughter's into him, so we watched it.
yeah, I don't get it. But anyway, the long walk. Yeah, I'm interested. I think the trailer is awful to see. I haven't
Right.
heard of this book. I was very familiar with the Running Man. Read it as a kid. Very like got a soft spot in my heart growing up with Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, and that one in particular. But the Long Walk, yeah, never read it, never heard about it, but I'm very interested in it. How about you?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to see this. And this is a really tough. The story is really tough, as you would expect from the premise. And very curious to see how they're translating it to the screen. But of course, that's all the reviews now. It's like, man, this movie's a real rough watch, and I'm like, yep, not surprising. So, but we will see how that plays out. I don't know how popular this is going to be. There's been a bunch of Stephen King adaptations this year that no one's watched. We saw the Salem's Lot terrible Salem's Lot movie last Halloween that really was not very popular. We saw The Life of Chuck, which is actually very good, pretty good, I'd say, not very good, pretty good. Parts of it are excellent that nobody watched. And now we have this film that hopefully more people will watch. I think The Running Man will be the blockbuster out of this set, of course.
Yeah, and that's got Edgar Wright behind it, so
Of
he's
course. Yeah. And Glenn
yeah,
Powell coming off of
bit of a
Twisters.
crowd pleaser. Glenn Powell, yep, Twisters, and that romantic comedy that I actually went to the cinema to see with
Oh
Sydney
man,
Sweeney.
that movie was terrible. But Sydney Sweeney,
Yeah, I think it was date night, and I had to give in.
you have to give in. I know sometimes you gotta.
Sometimes.
So you can watch Alien Romulus in the theater with your wife. You have to give in sometimes. That's like our advice to
Exactly.
our listener before. Oh, and one last thing that's coming out this weekend, of course, that I probably will watch as well because my friends all want to go see this. So this might actually be an event where we very rarely get together to see movies nowadays. But we grew up watching this film, which is Spinal Tap 2: The End Continues. Great title, The End Continues. But what's your relationship with Spinal Tap? Have you watched this at all?
Oh yeah, I've seen it a few times. Yeah, huge fan of Spinal Tap. But I'm a little bit apprehensive about this sequel. I don't know how it's going to go, but I think I'll definitely see it. Maybe I'll see the original again and then go and watch it.
Yeah, I'm curious to see this. I mean, there's definitely a lot of food for satire here since then. You think about, we were just texting about this today, my friends, and they're talking about how they were making fun of those bands from the 80s. And I'm like, they were making fun of those bands in the 80s. That movie came out in 1984. They're making fun of like Rainbow and Mountain, like bands from the 70s that didn't really make it. They're not making fun of Aerosmith. As a matter of fact, Aerosmith's like comeback was after that movie came out. If anything, that movie like it predicted the comeback of all those 70s bands, you know?
And all these bands doing farewell tours and
Of
again, another
course.
farewell to another one. So yeah,
That's why I love the
they-
subtitle, The End Continues, which is just so hilarious, right? They just keep touring and touring until they die.
and those guys are so musically talented that it's going to be
Oh, they
so
are.
fantastic to hear their new songs.
Yeah, just to hear the songs, I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. Oh, and one more recommendation, Darren. If you've never seen this, very highly recommended to you. But anybody who likes Spinal Tap at all, I think this is still available on Netflix. There's a band called Anvil! Exclamation point! The Story of Anvil, which is a documentary, not a satire. But this is a band from like San Francisco, I believe San Francisco, that came up with Metallica, used to tour with Metallica, and they just didn't quite make it. And they're actually, you listen to the music and you hear them play live, they're actually pretty good. But it's like, you know, you see them on this get together, this comeback tour. The tour runs out of money. They're like in Czechoslovakia trying to get their band going again. They have like a top 10 album in some like little former Russian satellite country. And like they're trying to use that money to like keep the tour going. And it literally is like Spinal Tap. They're playing in smaller and smaller arenas as it goes forward. They all work at like FedEx and truck drivers and stuff to make ends meet. It is an incredible documentary. Like what, I mean, really not just to make fun of these guys. It's like emotional and powerful, but hilarious also. It's like the real life Spinal Tap. So if you've never seen that, definitely check it out. And it's incredible. And it's Anvil! Exclamation point. The Story of Anvil.
The Story of Anvil. I do remember seeing this, and I remember it fondly. So yeah, I'm going to give that another watch.
All right. A lot of catching up there, but let's get on to the episodes. Okay. So this is called The Fly. And of course, Darren, you think right away, The Fly. We think about Cronenberg's Fly.
You do. And also, I think of that famous episode of Breaking Bad called The Fly, which
Oh,
was
right.
also set in a lab.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did not make that connection, but I'm sure that intersects here as well. All right. After last week, we had the big flashback sequence, of course. We find out that Boy Cavalier in that episode was the orchestrator of this crash. Moreau has a vendetta, but primarily in this new episode, we are just on the island again, Neverland, and all those fractures we saw forming before, even worse now. So we have full on containment breach at this point, and things are only going to get worse. A lot of this is setting up for the last two episodes, of course. We only have two episodes left for anybody who didn't know. And so my first question to you, Darren, before we get into any kind of breakdown, what'd you think of this episode? How'd you feel
I
about
can't
it?
believe we've only got two more episodes to go. It feels like it's flown by. A little bit mixed on this episode, I have to
Agreed.
say. I mean, it's always going to be a bit a downer from last week's episode, which was so good. But yeah, we're back with the hybrids, and I don't remember them as fondly as I remember them.
I agree. Yep.
And they're being a bit silly, and there's a bit of silly stuff going on, which there was last week as well, and all hell broke loose because, but yeah. You go on. What do you think about it?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. This is my least favorite of all the episodes we've seen so far. And it just seemed, obviously it's trying to do what the other episodes that for me worked really well, introducing these topics of like personhood, but also the exploitation of children, obviously. And, the what's the next evolution in humanity or whatever the next life form will be. So all these questions that Alien have asked, not that so much the child abuse aspect of this, which of course is maybe more pertinent to this show than we've ever seen before, but those themes I thought were pretty well developed previously. And then we have like the action was well integrated. Obviously last week was low hanging fruit, but we all wanted to see it and it was a lot of fun, but still had ideas in it as well. Here, it just felt really clunky. Like there are scenes in this episode that are fantastic, but so much of it just felt like we're just biding time and setting things up for next for the next episodes. And I literally wrote that in my notes that this made me feel like it's just like everybody splits up because they all have their little riffs. All the riffs we've been developing this whole entire season was just so that everybody would be alone in a room at some point, so that it becomes like a slasher movie where just like in slasher movies, it's like if that idiot just had a buddy, like if we had a buddy system on this compound, none of these horrible things would have happened, but it really goes into almost like slasher logic. But I guess that happens in all these Alien movies, actually. So I guess we just had to kind of get to this point, but it just felt like it was just going through the motions a lot of times.
Yeah, I have to agree. I didn't actually think about that. I didn't mind the whole slasher element, but just the fact that these hybrids have children's minds in adult bodies, it just seems very convenient that they just do silly things or very immature things, and it's not really telling me anything rather than just getting them into trouble for the sake of it.
Exactly. Yeah, like I found these ideas of like the fracture between these different characters very intriguing previously, and I felt like all of that was just set up for this, which is just like, well, that kind of cheapens everything that came before to me. But I mean, we had to get to this point anyway. I just felt like it wasn't as elegant as it has been for sure, and it's been uneven as it is. But I felt like much more positives than negatives in general up until this point. And here it was like, I think to your point, mixed. Like it was like, half the time I'm like, okay, I'm on board with this. Half the time I'm like, I don't know if this is working for me, A perfect example of this, by the way, a scene that should have worked for me, but I really didn't like, very near the beginning of the episode, not the actual beginning of the episode, but very close to the beginning. Your favorite character, Boy Cavalier, goes to this negotiation at Yutani's offices, and he shows up barefoot and he like crawls across the table, and all of this just felt so ridiculously contrived that like that's a perfect example. Like it isn't his character, and yet this scene didn't work for me.
I hated the barefoot walking. I hated when he put his feet on the table. Just shocking. That was the most hideous thing of the whole episode, I think, for me.
It literally is. You. Of course, it makes you want him to die, which of course is what the purpose is. But still, it just felt so unconvincing, basically.
And it should have been so much better, and Utani should have been so much smarter and seen where Boy Cavalier was going to come from and what his play was, and there should have been a little bit more power play between Kirsch and Morrow in the meeting, I thought, rather than just a couple of little sneaky looks.
But the whole final negotiation there, very cleverly to his extent. I mean, plot cleverly. I don't think the scene worked that well, but just as far as like the purpose of the scene, he is smart enough to say, okay, I'll give you the specimens, but only after this 6-week moratorium, which is the law. So then he kind of gets out on that, and he still gets $20 billion, as a payout, which I got to say, I just thought in my head, I'm like 100 years from now, at $20 billion is going to be like $20 million.
Yeah, it's nothing.
When you're a trillionaire, it's like, well, you make that in a day. Like it's not worth anything. But of course we do get maybe the best scene in the whole episode. There's a couple that might be vying for this, but I think for me, still my favorite episode, because after that meeting, we have Kirsch and Murrow in an elevator together. And I wrote down the dialogue here because it's so great.
It's
Kirsch
so
says, Kirsch, by the way, he's got his cattiness, his bitchiness cranked up to 11. Make my Spinal Tap reference right there. But it's like, he says, look at you, the almost human, self-hating machine. How you must envy me. And Murrow says, sure, yesterday's model, the incredible, irrelevant robot. Who wouldn't want to be you? What's it like working for a company that made you obsolete? And then Kirsch says, I don't know what you're talking about. And because he's pretending that they don't know about the hybrids. And Murrow goes, they're cute, your kids. They have, with their shiny new bodies. I got to get me one of those. And Kirsch says, a child or a body that isn't so sad?
Yeah.
Oh, God. And then Murrow says, you know what I like most about killing synths? They don't feel pain. So nothing clouds their minds when I start chopping them up. And Kirsch says, see, I would imagine it's the pain that makes it satisfying. Especially for cyborgs, that moment when you realize you're not a machine after all, when your first eyeball pops.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Delicious dialogue.
Yeah. And then Murrow ends it, by the way, by exiting the elevator saying, I'll see you soon, old toy.
Old toy. I love that the whole thing is just in one elevator ride.
Yes. It's so great. I thought this, for an episode that isn't that elegant, I thought this was so great. They are once again giving us just that little tease that this is all going to come to a head very soon. And it's just during this conversation in an elevator ride. I love this scene. It's so great.
It's so good, and it's such a tease, isn't it? You just know that's probably all you're going to get this episode, but you just want more and more and more of these two.
Right, and it's inevitably going to happen. We can leave. I have a few more points to touch on, but we'll leave the what the hell is Kirsch's plan, which I do not know, but we can talk about it when we get towards the end of the episode. Oh, another interesting point here that is strange, like double plotting that didn't really need. There's this whole conversation between Morrow and Utani about how he says, well, I have a backup plan. We're trying to get, I think I have somebody in that can get us one of the specimens, but, we can try to, like, they're thinking about orchestrating some kind of like disaster on the Neverland and in the chaos, make an escape. And I'm like, they haven't even done this. And it kind of just happened anyway.
Yeah, he's very brave, old Morrow, isn't he? I mean, he's gonna trap the alien specimens in the chaos to try to get them out of the island. I mean, it's an insane plan to do by yourself.
Seems like a terrible idea. Exactly. But by the time he shows up, he may not need to build or create any kind of distraction. I have a feeling the island's going to be in total chaos by the time they get there.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting what's happening with the Lost Boys here. Just different, all of them basically corrupted here. First of all, kind of shocking that they are willing to reset Nibs because they want her to be more presentable at this big, demo in a few weeks, which is really intriguing because you think about like, oh, you have like infinite life, and we're already saying, well, they are kind of like in this indentured servitude. But then if like even your memories and your experiences aren't your own, like what kind of existence is this anyway?
Just as an aside, so the actor playing the Atom
Adam,
is
yeah,
his
just
name,
mhm.
is Adrian Edmondson. So I remember him from back in the 80s as Vivian on The Young Ones. So he's a comedic
Wow,
actor.
that's I did not even recognize him. That's quite a while back.
I did not recognize him, but I had to Google his name, and because that was one of the shows that I used to watch as a kid. One of those shows that you're not supposed to be watching because I didn't really get any of the jokes. But yeah,
Right.
but just to see his progression from back then to now playing this incredible character is just amazing.
Another shocking twist here, in multiple ways, is what happens to Arthur here. First, he is reluctant to actually do the mind wipe on Nibs. And then, of course, when Adam confronts him about it, he thinks he has Dame Sylvia on his side. And she's like, no, I can do it by myself. Based on her reaction, she didn't like anticipate that he would get fired immediately, which is exactly what ends up happening. But that is the outcome. And what do you think? What do you think explains her willingness here to just jump in and be like, no, I can do it on my own? Does she think she's helping him
Well,
somehow?
that's right. I think she was just showing her faith with the hybrids, and she was ready to not just to throw him under the bus, but to just let him go with a little bit of protest, but not too much. And I think she just lets him choose his own path.
And of course, he gets him fired. He does do one more heroic thing before he becomes alien food, which is that he does show Hermit the codes, right? He types it onto the screen to get access to those ships. He also turns off this because it's going to be a very bad set of circumstances here or events here. He also turns off the camera tracking for all of the hybrids, which I guess is so that if they actually make it off the island, they can't get tracked. I mean, I assume there's other ways to track them, but I guess they can't track their step by step movements at least. But of course, if they are surrounded by aliens later on, no one's going to be able to know.
Okay, so he turns off the cameras. I was wondering about because if there's people watching the feed, they can see everything through these
Right.
hybrids' eyes. So it makes sense that he turns that off. I'm enjoying Hermit's performance. He doesn't get a lot to do, but
Right. Right.
he really uses the scenes quite well. And I think it's funny when his fellow grunts were like, "Stop talking about the boats. Don't ask so many questions."
I mean, it goes back to what the corporatism that the alien films are always critical of, where how there's always this corporate level of control. So there's different ways to control people. It doesn't have to be bugs controlled by a queen. There are other ways to be controlled, and you see it here, right? Where they're like, "Shut up about trying to get off of here. What's the alternative? Like this is we're getting paid well. We live in paradise." And he's like, "Oh, but you're not like the boss of yourself." They're like I'm the boss of myself when I'm fighting some random war somewhere I've never been to get deployed to, right? So it's like it's not so great out there, is what it comes down to.
Yeah, but the monsters are here.
The monsters are here, exactly, which is the thing that they're overlooking, of course. As long as you can look the other way, or they may not be able to for much longer. And then, of course, Toodles gets trapped in that
Oh.
room with the flies. Toodles, the scientific method is a method, not a suggestion box.
Yeah, I do like Kirch. I actually wrote notes for this episode, Victor. So I actually wrote down that Kirch is like the anti-chat GPT. So he gives all the answers, but
That's
he
fair.
doesn't say, yes, that's a great answer. He just goes, no. Do you think that's the right thing to do? I can't remember exactly what he says, but he doesn't suffer fools.
Yeah, but then he also just allows the most horrible things to happen. Another thing that basically comes out to be pretty much a lie is like, Toodles finds out that, eternal life, eternal life. What are these flies doing to his head? Like, is he, I mean, I guess you can re-implant his consciousness, can they? Or is he dead for good here?
That is a good question. I just assumed he was gone. He was a
Same,
goner. Those
same.
flies just went straight through. But you'd think they've got a backup somewhere.
Right. We would
But
hope.
how's the sheep? How's the sheep?
Yeah.
Smashing the glass,
I
locking
love
him
the
in.
sheep.
I love the sheep so much. I still don't know what's going on with it, and that's what I really love.
Yeah, the sheep is fantastic. Watching this whole time, like maybe the really going to become obviously they set up here to be a very important part of the end game. And I'm very curious to know what the sheep's agenda is. Remember, we were speculating last week that he might be a good guy who's trying to defeat these aliens, and maybe he still is. Maybe he's just trying to figure out a way to get out of his cage in this particular case. But so fascinating to see him just waiting and waiting and waiting, and then that moment when Toodles gets in there and just he headbutts the glass, just distracts him for that second, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes for his plan to come to fruition here.
I feel like he's a little bit like Kirsch in that he's an agent of chaos and that he
Yeah.
just wants to see, he or she, sorry, we should be saying she, just wants to see what happens when you just stuff with things slightly.
Well, I assume he wants to get out from where he is, but he just assumes that chaos is a better option than being inside that cage, of course. And of course, Kirsch is not around. Kirsch would be watching him very intently, so this is a chance for him to make a move.
Yeah, they love looking at each other, don't they, those two?
They do. They do. I think he wants to. I mean, I guess this has to play out, but that's not the first synthetic he's tried to drill into. I should say he tried to do that with nibs as well. So I do wonder if he's like, oh, there's another one. Here's my chance.
Yeah, yeah, very attracted to the synthetics over the humans.
And of course, here, one last of the Lost Boys to bring up. Moreau has been manipulating slightly from a distance. He's saying, I'm going to kill your mom. Of course, he's not even with the mother anymore, but he doesn't know that. And he's looking to bring Hermit down there, but Hermit gets called away. So poor Arthur trying to do the right thing, like really like one of the few morally uncompromised people on this show. And now he's got a face hugger stuck to his face.
I did like that slightly was just quite useless at being able to execute the plan and it just happened accidentally. I thought that was fun. But yeah, Arthur, he had nothing to do anymore after he was fired. So yeah, stick a face hugger on him.
How was the face hugger door open? Who propped that door open? That was Slightly who did that, right?
Slightly open the door, yeah, while Arthur was busy trying to drag the other guy out of the cage,
Right,
out of the fly
right.
cage. And there was an amazing shot. I think as he opened the door and the egg kind of started moving, there was a shot
Yeah.
of the fully grown alien
Yes.
just kind of peeking into frame, which I
Yep.
just thought
Yep.
was great. It just characterizes this guy that's just like, oh, something's happening here with my eggs. Let's see what's going on.
What are they feeding this guy? Because he grew a lot since last episode.
He did, didn't he? I don't know what they're feeding any of them. I mean, they gave the flies certain bits and pieces of junk just to see what would happen.
The eyeball, well, I guess he's feeding off the sheep, but I mean, he's not growing any bigger. That alien's growing like crazy.
Yeah, the aliens, they grow so fast, don't they? And I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't talked about the communication between Wendy and
Yes.
the alien.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit sus on that. I mean, she goes, "Oh, I can't get the pronunciation right. What does that even mean? What is
Right.
she even saying to it?" I mean, yeah, I'm a bit over that.
Well, you know what? I agree that it didn't quite work for me this week, but at the same time, as I was taking notes, primarily, by the way, I kind of came to this understanding that I was trying to kind of come up with some cohesive understanding of this episode and honestly of the show. Let me just get to my critique here. I felt like there's really no emotional stakes in the show at this point, which is my big complaint, I think. And there were a lot of people when we were meeting the Lost Boys. I had a lot of empathy for different characters, and I was very curious about even Kirsch, and like maybe he has an agenda that I could sympathize with. Like, maybe he's being put out to pasture. Maybe he thinks that the hybrids are his, and if the human race dies, so what? They're a pariah, right? So he might have that kind of agenda, and I kind of had sympathy for everybody. And after this episode, this is kind of why it kind of wrong-footed it for me. That I'm really like, I don't really care what happens to any of these people here, even the ones who are empathetic. I mean, like, it's terrible what happened to Toodles. It's terrible what happened. I mean, I really was upset when Toodles got killed, by the way. And I also feel really bad for Arthur. But, it's just in the moment. I don't really feel like there's real stakes in the show. And anyway, so I was trying to kind of come up with a cohesive approach to the show, even, and specifically this episode. And I did think about what the show's trying to come to, I think, is this like battle for what's happening with Wendy slash Marcy. Hermit tells her, like, I'm going to get you off this island. And she's like, I don't want to leave. And then she starts reiterating stuff that we heard like very early in the episode, by the way. Hermit was like, I need to. This is actually a very funny quote. He said that, how do I take care of her when we leave the island? And Kirsch says, A, you think she's leaving the island? And B, he says, that question you just asked is like an onion asking, how do you take care of a star?
Yeah, so good.
And he's literally saying, like, she has this infinite ability to her intellect can just scale and scale. So someday she can like build a rocket ship and travel the universe, the cosmos. And so it's just like not even a question to ask this. The mundane things you're asking about are irrelevant. But then you have him trying to pull her back into that. And she's like, no. And she's literally talking the way that Cavalier says. She even says it. She quotes him. Like, the kid said, she means Kid Cavalier. So there's this reiterating of that. But then there's this kind of her sympathizing with the alien, going like, it's not, it's not its fault that it's here. It didn't choose to be here. And she's trying to talk to it. And Dame Sylvia goes, they're just specimens. And I can't imagine that they're caged, these aliens, that of course she feels like the hybrids, are caged as well, especially as they're growing, to use this metaphor again, growing larger than their shells can handle. And everybody wants them to just do what they want them to do. Her brother wants them to be what they are. Even Kirsch wants them to be like, don't be a human being, be like me, So everybody wants her to be this something. And as a matter of fact, she says to Dame Sylvia that I don't want to be people if this is how people are, when she finds out that Nibs was erased. So I think that's what they're trying to ask here. Like, what is she going to do? Is she going to team up with the alien? And like, is she going to be mommy to this alien? Is she going to go back with her brother? Is the human side going to win? Is she going to align herself with Kirsch? Is she going to do something else? So I do think that's the question that the big question that the show is trying to ask. But I don't think it's doing a really good job of illustrating that, because I had to kind of, take notes to come to that realization, basically.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, I wanted to care more about the Lost Boys ever since from the start, when you realize that they're dying kids.
Yep.
Surely there's a lot of sympathy. You want a lot of sympathy for that, but I'm just not feeling it in their adult bodies. They're not really doing much for me, even though, you feel for slightly dying. You feel from the other guy he's been manipulated by the adult in the world, and Smee is acting very childish and just gives those little hugs. He's not doing anything, and the other girl wasn't even hardly
She's
in
not
it.
even here, right? Yeah.
No, and Nibs, we're not sure what's going on with Nibs. She's been wiped. Okay, well, that doesn't really say anything to us. But Wendy, I feel like she's got that. She's finally understanding that her body is limitless and her potential is limitless, and she has that childlike desire to do whatever she wants, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, how's that conflict going to play with what she wants for the alien, who is a species where it's obviously incredibly dangerous,
right?
But she thinks that it just wants to survive. Well, of course, we all do.
Dame Sylvia says that they're just instinctual killing machines. They have very basic requirements. And very interesting as well is when Wendy says, well, isn't that how all living things are? So, but even then, Wendy is now aware that you are judging these creatures for being, less than you, supposedly. But Wendy is like now not biological basically anymore, right? So she goes like, you're being very judgmental of this creature that kills things and has its own agenda and is like, why? And you have bigger brains, human beings do, right? But your behaviors are not that different. In the end, you might have different explanations for why you do what you do, but they're not that different. So I do wonder if like that is very alienating, no pun intended, to her, because she's seeing that like, like maybe she is now seeing them so low on the food chain that, maybe that distance is growing so much that she doesn't see that much difference between these people and this corporation and these insect creatures.
Yeah, and I think it's important about Nibs how she thought she was pregnant. I mean, we see these
Yeah.
alien species, all they're trying to do is feed and then procreate or and get more and more multiply. Whereas Nibs wants to do that too. She's got this innate feeling of doing that, but we don't see that these hybrids are going to be able to procreate. They're just going to live forever, assumingly.
Yeah. I guess you wouldn't need to procreate anymore when you are your own child in a way.
Unless you get dissolved by a fly.
Exactly. Unless that happens. Of course, Hermit is trying to negotiate this. He's like, what's best for his sister? You know, how does he escape a prison when his sister wants to stay? He asks at one point. So it's like, yeah, like, you know, he's in this situation. So what is the right thing for him to do too? I mean, it comes down to that fact that if she doesn't want to leave, is the right thing to do to force her to leave. The right thing for him is to leave because he's going to get eaten by one of these aliens if he doesn't get out of there. So hopefully, at least he does make an escape, and we'll see if she goes with him or not. And then, yeah, we have this big question as like, what is going on with Kirsch?
So poor old Kirsch. So they're just on the long flight back from some city meeting with Yutani.
Yeah.
And he's just got his little screen there
Yep.
that he's seeing everything that's going on.
Yep.
And Cavalier's pretending to fly the airplane and goes, "Oh, is everything fine?" And Kirsch looks at him as if nothing is fine.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Oh, yeah, everything's fine."
Affirmative. Yeah.
And Cavalier just takes it.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, Cavalier, of course, being so immature, is just in there trying to like pretend that he's flying the ship and with his like arms out, like he's Peter Pan again. But yeah, it's oh, speaking of Peter Pan, by the way. So we have another him reading to the hybrids again, now over a PA. So you see the distance now between him and the Lost Boys. And I think that also represents the fact that, you know, they were like his favorite new toy, but you know, not only is Kirsch now an old toy, as referencing that quote earlier, but he's moved on from these hybrids. He's got something more interesting now. He's got the new shiny toy, this constantly evolving interest that he has where he never finishes anything apparently, although, hey, he's a trillionaire, so I guess it worked for him somehow. But it's interesting that he's using this quote. And in this quote, by the way, it says that 2 is the beginning of the end, meaning that in the book, that means that when the kids hit 2 years old, by the way, it's the beginning of the end. Because I don't know if you know this from Peter Pan, by the way, there's only one reference to this, but at one point, Wendy asks Peter how many Lost Boys there are on the island. And he goes, well, no one here. There's only one rule. You're not allowed to grow up. So as the Lost Boys grow up, that since they're not allowed to grow up, he goes, I have to thin them out. I have to thin them out. So Peter Pan is killing off these kids. And it starts at 2. That's when things start going wrong.
I do not remember that in the Disney film.
It's not in the Disney film. Yes, definitely not. And in the book, it's only like one sentence, but it is pretty creepy when you think about that. He is reading this to them.
That is dark. So, well, he is going to effectively kill them off by turning his attention to these aliens.
Yeah, I mean, whether he erases their memories in the future when they've run their course, or he's letting these people get. I mean, he sent them into that just as for fun to see like how do they react. He sent them into like a life threatening situation, and we see now that you know, they can die as some form of death. Their bodies can break down. So I mean, he just sent those kids in there who are like, think about that, inside those shells, they're like 8 to 10-year-old kids, and he just sent them in there. And he really doesn't care if they get killed off, other than, you know, if he loses all of them and it hurts his market share. But I think other than that, he doesn't really care.
Now, Victor, is this Cavalier going to die in this series, or is there going to be
God, I
another
hope so.
series, and we're going to have to live with him again?
I hope they do kill him off. I think that would be a mistake. I don't know. I mean, obviously, this has already been shot, but I think it would be a mistake to let him survive because they have set him up in such a completely unsympathetic way. And it really even feels, and maybe this is a commentary on some of these egomaniacal CEOs we see now, that they just think every idea they have are like super smart. And it turns out when you kind of see under the covers of when there have been these giant corporate collapses in the past, that the people were like really erratic and, you know, they were like good, you know, they were good at creating attention and talking and selling ideas, but not great at following through. And even if there was success, it was usually someone behind the scenes that was making these things actually work. Like there's a whole article you should read, by the way, that like of all the ideas that Musk had that he said publicly about things that the car would do, and that the engineers are like, what is this? Like what the hell is he talking about? And there's like throwing away 90% of the ideas and then just getting the. So my point is that he's not building the cars and putting them on the road, right? He's just kind of selling the idea. So just because you're good at that doesn't mean that like every idea you have is genius. And I think there's a commentary here about that. But my point is, you wouldn't make a character that is so one-dimensional if you don't really just want him to be like a villain to be killed off. I think you'd need to make him a little. At this point, they'd have to make him more interesting for me to care to see him in another season of the show. And I do hope. Maybe I'm just being hopeful. Maybe I'm wrong, but I am hope that we don't have to see this guy next year or next whenever.
Yeah, and
3 years from now, when the next season comes out.
All these TV shows, there is the prospect of another season, is there, if it's successful? It's not like this is a one and done.
Well, this is definitely, they were mentioning that they have a multi-year plan for this when they brought it to
Gotcha.
Noah Hawley originally. So they definitely want, we'll see how it all pans out. If the ratings are high enough, because it's an expensive show, obviously. They want this to be a multi-season show for sure.
Interesting. Well, the fact that we just hate him so much as a villain means that maybe they're not going to kill him off and they're going to bring him back for next year because he's so good.
I want a more interesting villain, though, is what I would say. But we'll see. We'll see. Also, because he's a kid, kids age quickly. I mean, he's not a kid. Obviously, he's older than a kid, but he's selling his youth. I think it's hard for an actor to play youthful for a long period of time. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I personally not that interested in this villain. I would rather see a more well-formed villain in the next season of the show.
Yeah, I had hope for Yutani, but the fact that she just folded so quickly in that negotiation means that maybe she's not as strong as I thought she was. But yeah, Kirsch and Morrow, I mean, that thing's just got to keep going. Anyway, we're talking about next season. We've still got 2 episodes to go.
Yes, exactly. Okay, big thing I wanted to bring up here. The Fly, right? We got to think about, excellent point you brought up that I didn't even think about, the whole lab set episode, that bottle episode. I don't know if you know the story, by the way. That was Rian Johnson who directed that episode of Breaking Bad, by the way. And they shot that episode in because they ran out of money. They had no budget. So they had obviously budget allocated. They had run out of cash. They had a very expensive last episode. They're usually the most expensive episodes. Like a lot of stuff happens, a lot of locations, sometimes explosions and such. So the budget was allocated for the last couple episodes, and they had like, hey, we need another episode of the show to comply with the season requirements, and we have no money left. So they wrote an episode that takes place inside of the lab. So definitely not the case here, that this is not any kind of budget restrictions in this particular case. But I did like you bringing up that that connection to The Fly in Breaking Bad. But the Cronenberg connection, obviously body horror, of course. But I do want to go back to what happened with Wendy, and what's happening to her potentially with this whole connection to The Fly, right? You have a movie in which Seth Brundle, you've seen The Fly before I continue, right?
Seen The Fly. Yep. Love The Fly.
Yeah. Great film. But you have this situation where he is basically, his DNA is merged with an alien, with a fly, I should say. And he's become this alien life form of his own. But he actually has this whole conversation at one point. Gina Davis shows up to talk to him. And once again, I love this quote, so I'm going to read it because I copied it down for this very purpose. He says, "Have you ever heard about insect politics? Neither have I. Insects don't have politics. They're very brutal. No compassion, no compromise. We can't trust the insect. I'd like to become the first insect politician," when she doesn't understand what he's saying. And he says, "I'm saying I'm an insect who dreamt he was a man and loved it, but now the dream is over and the insect is awake. I'm saying I'll hurt you if you stay." So I do wonder if we have Wendy communicating with this alien, and that somehow this revelation that she is like closer to this mindless creature potentially than, or at least she has more empathy towards it than she has towards these people.
She doesn't have family anymore. Well, we don't think. The father's not in the picture. She's obviously not showing too much love for Dame Sylvia, and Arthur's going to be out of the picture. Cavalier is a bit of a father figure, but You're right. She is showing empathy with the alien, and she can see that it is kind of a part of its own world. And she's the first of this new breed of hybrid. So maybe she's trying to find her identity. Um, but why is she siding with a supposed killing machine? I
She
wonder.
doesn't see them that way, which is interesting. Maybe, and maybe this is something that be revealed later on, maybe the communication with the creature, she is picking up something, even though she doesn't understand that it is potentially more intelligent than we actually think. I mean, if that was the case, if these aliens are more intelligent than we know, that would be new to this franchise for sure. Because as far as we know, they are like ants or something, right? They just like swarm, or they coordinate, probably like insects do, but they don't seem to be that intelligent. But I mean, they are smart enough to hide and sneak up on people, even when they're alone. So maybe they're not so dumb.
Yeah, that's a good quote that you pulled from that film. That makes it very interesting if you can kind of tie that in somehow. I do like when she was kind of playing with the young alien, and
Yeah.
Kirsch kind of goes, she destroyed a full-grown one. So yeah, she's
Yeah.
not going to have too much
She'll
trouble
be okay.
with
Yeah.
a little one behind glass.
Although now it's full grown. Oh, another thing I thought was interesting here as a correlation, the hybrids, all of them, even the other kids who still are much more childish, they are, especially when you see slightly becoming more conniving and becoming a little darker, they're all evolving very quickly. And it seems to be the case. Like, Kirsch even mentions that like this, her brain power is unlimited. She's going to keep evolving, evolving way, way past us. So, which I have another question about that, by the way, but that given that reality, that is what is possible with her, maybe she also sees this alien that is growing and growing and is also trapped, and just it's evolving as quickly as she is. So maybe there's just something basic like that she's just seeing that correlation there.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense to me.
So one thing that seems to be like maybe a plot hole here for me, given what they're saying about how she's really not human anymore, she's evolving so quickly, and even emotions and things like that are just there for her own, her own guardrails, so that she has a familiarity of what was there before. But even that could be turned off and rewound. Like we don't even want them to have their unique personal experiences. We can rewind them, we can erase them. So this is my question to you, Darren. Why even put, and maybe this is a plot hole here, or a logic hole in the show, why even put people into these bodies if you like don't want the people? Like, think about it. The peopleness of these people are leading to like a lot of complications, a lot of dangerous situations, and maybe total collapse of this whole entire project. So why do this with people at all?
Oh, totally agree. The scene where I mean, after they erase Nib's memories, they have her wake up with Wendy right there, and they haven't even briefed Wendy
Yeah,
of what's
exactly.
happened, and she's just asking, "Oh, what about your pregnancy, your fake pregnancy, or whatever?" I think the pregnancy was very interesting. That's a really
Yes. Yeah.
interesting idea,
Yeah.
and where that was going to go, I was actually quite interested in it. But to just wind it back and just erase it, I thought it was a bit disappointing, to be honest, especially when
Yeah.
Wendy brings it straight back up and then just confuses Nibs even further.
Yeah.
So you're right. The humanness, the fact that she wants to have a baby even though she cannot, or the fact, and why did she want to have it after her encounter with the eyeball? Yeah, they just dropped it. So yeah, not happy with that.
Yeah, and it also just makes me think like, why would they want to put? I mean, I guess the most practical terms of it is, well, if you can transfer someone's consciousness, you can sell that as a product. Obviously, that's what everybody wants, right? Eternal life through transfer of consciousness. Sure, okay, I buy that. But you put them in these like superhuman bodies, and they're gonna like intellect is just gonna scale and scale. It's like, why would you do that with a human being when you know that, for example, it's just like, oh, it's so annoying. Like, think about every one of the Lost Boys. It's so annoying that you're still, being manipulated because you still worry so much about your mom. It's you and your brother, you with, wanting to be pregnant and you can't be, right? It's like every one of these people is like having these fundamental flaws, which are leading to literal collapse. Like this whole thing is going to be a catastrophe because of these human limitations that we all have, of course. But then why put them into these superhuman bodies? Like Nibs potentially could have like torn Dame Sylvia's head off the other day because she is like this emotional child trapped in this super body. It just seems like a really bad idea across the board. And I don't know if the show is ready to, explain that to me at all, because I don't understand what their plan was.
Yeah, totally. And I mean that scene was echoed as well with Wendy coming forward to Dame Sylvia, and she had to retreat because she felt threatened again.
Exactly.
And the way that Kirsch is so interested in these kids, I mean, as you say, he's the old toy now, but as the machine, he can see that the human consciousness in these hybrids is not working out. And that's why he's so interested in it. He's like, well, hang on a second. I'm not the old toy. These are barely working, and they can get manipulated so easily.
So that might be a perfect segue into the final thoughts here, which is, okay, so what do you have any idea what Kirsch's actual plan is? Of course, he sees this again, seeing this all play out. He can see it from the lab cameras. I'm sure at this point he knows that he can't read from their minds, but he seems cool. Like it seems like he doesn't care how chaotic things go on the island. So that makes me wonder, like, what is his goal? Is it maybe, maybe we've already touched on some of these things. Is it because he thinks like, oh, well, I am the old toy, and he's jealous and he wants to have that supremacy again? Or does he want the kids does he want to be like, does he basically want to dispose of Cavalier and disgrace him and end this project by, killing Cavalier, or minimally just disgracing the company? Is that what you think is happening? Because these are some strange choices he's making here.
They really are. And I can't think that he's jealous because that's a human emotion. I think he just needs to act as a machine. I'm trying to think what happened with the Fassbender character in the other Alien films, where he did have kind of a goal of his own. So I'm not sure if Kirsch is going for something, or he really just is this agent of chaos and just watching everything. But then if he's watching everything happen and letting it happen, he doesn't tell Cavalier at all. He keeps him in the dark. So does he want the aliens to go crazy? Does he want the hybrids to meet their end? Do we think Toodles ripped off the little chute to put the food in? Is that because he was super strong, or had Kirsch kind of rigged that to
I have a question
happen?
about that too. Exactly. Yeah, I have the same question.
So yeah, I don't know what Kirsch is doing is the short answer to
Me too.
to the long question.
And they're not giving us a lot of clues. We just see him watching everything. He's aware of it all, but he's not cluing anybody in, and he's not taking any kind of precautions to prevent any of this stuff from happening. So I'm very curious to see what the overall plan is for all of this. But
And I love that. I love that he's just watching, and I love that we don't know what's going on. Yeah, and whether he is working for another company or whether he's trying to undercut Cavalier for some personal gain. Yeah, super curious.
and then let's just quickly talk about these new creatures. So we have the flies. We had not seen these flies at all before, had we?
I was racking my brain. I don't remember seeing the flies before. Maybe they were in their little nest, and maybe we saw it when they were bringing them into the lab right back in episode 1 or 2.
And then, of course, the eye creature, inside the alien, as you call them, inside of the sheep. The sheep, by the way, I was reading up on this because I thought it was so cool. But they used an actual sheep. They put the actual sheep, by the way, in the scene where the sheep is reacting to the eye running around the ground. I was saying that it was very CGI. It was very CGI, but it turned out it was a practical creature. So they had a puppet that they were running around with this thing on the ground with this octopus creature. And the sheep is freaking out because it's like, what the hell is that? And they also had a practical effect with the eye going into the sheep, a puppet that they built. And I love the puppet, by the way. This is a puppet. So when you see the sheep just standing dead still and sometimes just having these very herky-jerky movements, that's an actual puppet they built of the sheep with the eye in there. And I love this sheep. It's so awesome.
That's excellent. I love hearing that stuff.
Yeah, same. And of course, we still don't know. We saw that poor Toodles before he died seemed to have like a little bit of an affinity for the plant-like creature because he like gave him his food and the little thing came out and he kind of like waved at it. So we still haven't seen what's fully going on with that thing. But so I'm still curious to know what that is, and I'm sure that's going to pay off at some point in the future as well.
Oh, totally. That plant's gonna, yeah,
God
it's
knows
gonna
what's
do
inside of
something
there.
good.
He's been
Will
laying
we
in
ever
wait this
see
whole
that?
time. Yeah. It was one of the first things, like, when we see that scene in the very first episode where Kirsch is like, what's this? And we still haven't found out. So, it's going to be something impressive when it comes to.
And the leeches, are the leeches still around, or were they
I
just
guess
in that
so.
last episode? I don't know.
I don't know. The leeches don't need a lot of real estate. So I'm not sure. They might just be in one of those tubes in the other lab. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That's on the ship. I'm confusing it with the ship. I don't know what happened to the
Yeah,
leeches.
yeah, I think I was too.
Well, you know what? The leeches, I think there's two of them, if I remember correctly, and they sucked the blood out of poor Porn Chai and that other
Yeah,
random dude. They like swole up with blood and then rolled away. So I don't know if they were ever captured after that.
interesting.
They might just be leeches. Not that exciting. But of course, we end with Godsmack, Keep Away, which I guess the lyrics make sense in this particular case, but I'm not a big Godsmack fan over here.
Yeah, look, I didn't recognize the track, and I barely know the band, so I'm not sure if they've even made their way out here. They're not. They sound like a Christian rock band. I don't think they are, but yeah, not familiar with Godsmack, but the kind of sound really echoes that 90s alt
Yeah,
rock.
that's where
So yeah, it kind of
they're
fits.
all from that same genre and that same group of artists. We do, by the way, hear Alt J's Tessellate earlier on, so at least we get a little bit of a different
Love
music.
that track. Yeah, love it, and yeah, I really enjoyed it the way they use that in this.
Yeah. So, any thoughts on what might be happening or coming in the next two episodes?
Well, the next episode is the second to last. Everything's gonna go down. I think a few of the hybrids are not gonna make it through, and Morrow's gonna go in. He's gonna be on the island, and he's gonna be trying to capture the specimens, and he's gonna meet old Kirsch, isn't he?
Who do you have? You want to have like the top three people? We can't rank them all, but top three people who are definitely going to make it out of this season, and bottom three that are definitely not. Do you have a guess? Like Wendy is definitely going.
I'm terrible at this because everyone I want to make through will probably die. Oh, of course, Morrow. I guess Wendy has to make it through.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I'm kind of gone off Wendy a little bit, to be honest.
Oh yeah, I'm
And
not going by my preference. I agree. I think that they've kind of mishandled her recently. After a really interesting setup, it hasn't really developed her that much. But yes, I'm just saying, like practically, that she's so central to the story. I can't imagine them investing all this in her and then killing her off at the end.
yeah, I really want Morrow to live, so that
Same.
probably means he will die.
Right.
Kirsch is an android. Yeah, bring Kirsch through. And Cavalier, I really want him to die, so he will probably live.
I think Cavalier is going to die. I have him at the bottom of the list.
Okay.
I think Wendy's going to go. I think I see. I really want Kirsch and Murrow, and I think they know. When you think about how they just tease them, it's like they knew even when they were writing the script that that's going to be where the real chemistry is between the two of them. But it makes me feel like they probably can't have both of them survive. So maybe one will make it, one won't, or maybe one makes it and the other one we don't know, something like that. But I can definitely imagine them continuing that into another season because, like I said, that's where the juice is, right? So they definitely want to hang on to that. I think they should get rid of Kid Cavalier. We already have 5 of these CEO. We already have the Wayland Yutani mythology that goes through all the other alien films. We could just shift this whole thing over to Wayland Yutani in the next season. I think maybe that's what this is.
That's a good point. They bring up that there's 5, don't they? So
Right.
yeah, finish with Cavalier this season. Next season, let's have another one, and we ultimately know that Yutani wins it all, don't they?
Yeah, seems to anyway. I don't know if anyone wins anything in these shows, but it's all just nihilism all the way down. But but we watch it anyway. All right, Darren, we'll know soon enough, less than a week before that becomes available. Yeah, we'll be discussing it here. And if we watch anything this weekend, I might go see
Long
Spinal
Walk,
Tap.
you're
The
interested
Long Walk.
in? Oh,
Either one.
is Spinal Tap out this weekend? Okay, all right.
In the U.S., I don't know how it's going to be out there by you, but check your local listings, as they say.
Okay.
But I might be trying to watch both of those this week. Probably won't be able to see both, but maybe one or the other. I'll let you know how they are. I'll drop a review in here if I get around to it.
All right. That sounds fantastic.
All right, Darren. Thanks again.
Okay. Cheers, Victor. Bye.